I can put some away.
I
if you
think,
want.
yes.
No, I got it.
And then we can go through and check the things and put them where they go. I'm just confused with what keeps people from going back through and checking everything. Like, I kind of feel like they should.
All right, Alan, I just sent you the link.
All right, I got the email. Give me 1 minute.
Hello, where did everybody go? I'm talking to my phone. Y'all. Hey, so y'all left the meeting and it didn't pop up on my phone. What's going on, Ingrid?
All right, Ingrid.
Okay, I guess I'm
we-
in now.
Ingrid, we have the live stream available, so if you could go.
Great. Good morning. A meeting of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners Occupational Therapy Advisory Committee pursuant to lawful notice is duly convened and called to order at 10:05 a.m. Friday, March 7th, 2025 via Zoom virtual video. Please note any comments by the public are welcome and can be emailed to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov. Dr. Collada, please confirm that you have verified the identity of all tele and video conference participants.
We have done so.
Is the sound clear and audible to the public and those on the tele and video conference?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All additions to the executive or public agenda must be made presently, as we will no longer make additions to the agenda after the close of the public session. I'm now going to review the mission. The mission of OTAC is ultimately to protect the public, i.e., the consumers of occupational therapy, by regulating competent practice and upholding the standards set forth by the governing rules and regulations. Members present are as follows. Kathleen, I'm blanking on your name, last name.
Norcross.
Norcross, thank you. Kathleen Norcross. Kim Solari. Mary Green Keys. Amy Lariviere, Raylena Crooks, and myself, Ingrid Frank. I will ask Raylena, please, to confirm that we have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Also present at the meeting are Dr. Vincent Collada, Executive Director of LSBME, Patricia Wilton, LSBME Executive Counsel, Phyllis Johnson, Licensing Analyst Supervisor, Lauren Suddeth, LSBME Attorney, and Jennifer Lucky, Louisiana Occupational Therapy Association President. Is Jacinta also on?
Yes.
Okay.
Jacinta's on, and Alan Phillips, I'm the IT director here running the IT side of the meeting. So,
all right, there we go. So the first thing on our agenda is our old business of approving the minutes from our meeting on January 31st, 2025. Let's see, Dr. Van, are you the one controlling? There we go. So let's see. We obviously approved the minutes. You can keep scrolling. Dr. Collada gave us an update, I believe, on, we reviewed all of the public comments that came about from publication of our rules, and we decided to go ahead and add DROT as one of the abbreviations. that would be acceptable for occupational therapists to use to identify themselves if they have a post-professional OT degree. We also had other discussions around the different things that members had brought up, community OTs had brought up. This got into some needed law changes that we talked about, including changing AOTA to NBCOT for the exam, and the change that Dr. Collada is going to be putting forth in regards to temporary permitting. Could you scroll down just a bit more, Dr. Van? See, we voted for those things. And then yeah, DRT, we voted for that, for the rules. Further, update on the submission of, we got an update on the current rules from Lauren Suddeth. And then we went into executive session and voted on 3 items in executive session. So is there anybody who wants to make any comments or changes to the minutes?
No.
Oh, okay, could I get someone to motion to approve the minutes?
I will, Amy.
All right, a second.
I second Kathleen.
Any public comment? Is there any public comment?
Not at this time, but I do think we need to just remind everybody that's listening and watching that if you have a public comment, please address it to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov, and we will read it into the record and make sure it becomes part of the record.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item. With Jennifer Lucky, well, no, we'll move on to the next agenda. We'll go in order because yes, that'd be the next thing, Dr. Van, is really to ask for an update from either you or Patricia Wilton on where the updated rules are in the process of
The
approval.
best one to do that is Ms. Lawrence. So Ms.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We sent it a few weeks ago to the legislature and to the AG's office, and it's still sitting with the AG's office. They're reviewing it. We did send them a couple of rules at the same time. So they might be a little backed up on that. But it should be shortly. And then after that, we kind of just get the ball rolling. So it's not too long after we get their response. So we should be, in the next few months, have that published rule ready to go into effect.
Lauren, were you able to add the DROT to that
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, because that was just kind of a technical change. It wasn't really substantive, so I don't think we needed to have a hearing on it. So we haven't heard back from them about that. I don't think it'll cause an issue. But if the AG's office has anything that they raise, we might need to talk about it at the next meeting. But we'll see.
Okay, great. I hope the AG gets through that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And just so everybody knows, when the AG sends it back, if there's any corrections we need to do, we make those corrections. We then notice it, and then if anybody wants to have a oversight hearing, they can request either the House or the Senate Health and Welfare for an oversight hearing. That has to be done usually within 35 days. If there's no oversight hearing and no problem, it's for final action and the governor approves it, and then we can implement them.
Yeah, and it went to the legislature at the same time that it went to the AG's office, and we've heard nothing from the oversight committees.
Is no good news good news?
Yes.
ma'am.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Want to jump?
Right, great. Any public comment?
None at this time.
Okay. The next item is an update from Dr. Van or Patricia Wilton just on the status of changing the law regarding temporary permitting and where that is.
Okay, so the board is wanting to move away for routine temporary permitting, just to bring everybody up to speed in case you forgot. We will have times when perhaps another COVID-like pandemic, where we need to utilize them, but in the event that there's not any of that, we'll not use routine temporary permits. Yours is one of the few laws that says we shall, not may. Everybody else is may, which is permissive but not required. And we are meeting with the people at the LDH to put that change in effect on Monday, and hopefully it's going to be part of the larger LDH bill at that time. So that's where we are.
So I'm sorry, I just got a text from Glenn and I got distracted. So it has gone to LDH, or no, you're putting it all together still?
They know about it. We're meeting with them Monday to see what they want to do.
Okay. Meeting with Monday. Okay,
Right.
great. All right. Next on our agenda then is for you, Dr. Van, to talk about what you learned at the latest OT Compact Commission meeting and concerns that you have.
I think we'll basically take 4 and 5 together. They're making great progress drafting and putting together the proposal for the data set. And so we can have a good exchange of data. They've agreed that everybody would be able to use APIs so that it will not be a problem. That's part of the delay because they have to write these APIs. At least the commission has to write their side of the API, and then each of the individual licensing bodies will write their side. And that way the API will work with an almost automatic exchange of data.
Wait, Dr. Van, what does API stand for?
Application Program Interface.
Okay.
And basically what it does is it takes all the fields that might be in my files and converts them to all of the fields that needs to be in the commission's files, and data moves back and forth. So that we don't have to do a lot of data entry for all of these things. So we're trying to, we want our analysts to be analysts and not data entry clerks, and that's what we're moving to as much of this as we can. So the issue that then came up was the compact data set itself. And while they have a few basic things that are reasonable to ask for anybody who wants a compact permission / license, they are deciding that they want to have every compact, I should say every OT licensed in Louisiana and every OTA licensed in Louisiana for us to send up their data, whether they want to be in a compact or not, and it's held by them. And my legal team and I have grave concerns about privacy rights. I talked to Ms. Ingrid and she shares our concerns. And so we're pushing them to make it, we're not going to send up data because number one thing, it's stale in time. Number two, it's a lot of work for us to keep it updated. And we would rather just do it as somebody wants to get a compact license, we would send your data up to them. Now, what it may require for everybody, if you're relatively stable in the community for a couple of years and you've not had a recent criminal background check, when you ask to be in the compact, we will probably have to get a current criminal background check to send that up with us, with the data to make sure that everybody knows that you don't have any criminal background problems. But again, for us number one, if we had to send it every day, we'd have to annually ask everybody to do this again. And I don't think that's reasonable. And number two, we take great pains to protect your data. You have lots of statutory protections that we can't violate. And this leaves us a little bit uneasy. And so I'm really working with them to try and make them understand. Some of the other licensing boards are expressing the same concern. I had a phone call this past week while I was in DC that one of the other, Maryland is about as concerned as we are about giving everybody's data at the same time. But again, I just want to let you know that I think we're going to resist this as much as we can. And quite frankly, they decided that I made such a persuasive case that they asked me to be on the rules committee for the compact. And that's where I hope to be able to exercise some influence to protect your data. And the one other thing is that they want to have the same price for OTs and OTAs for a compact permission. We recognize that we have one fee and the OTAs are 2/3 of that fee. It'll be all one fee. And we're looking at how to manage that as well. So we'll have to figure out those things as we work through this, because some of it will be outside of our control. Because you remember that whatever they pass as rules becomes law in Louisiana. And we're trying to prevent anything that really doesn't protect your data. That's what we're trying to do. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them about what's going on at this time.
I have a question about the price first. If an OTA in Louisiana does not want a compact license,
Right.
would we still be able to have them pay less than an OT in Louisiana who does not want a compact
Yes,
license?
you're
Or,
correct.
but
What
if the
happened-
OTA did want a compact license, then, and if the commission decides to go ahead with keeping it the same price for both, then the OTA would have to pay the same price as an OT for a compact.
Well, we're looking at a number of things, and really, I have to be honest and tell you, if we have to do a lot of data entry that we can't do by APIs, and it's going to be costly, we're going to invoke possibly the use of the reciprocal license fee, which is a flat rate 75 for everybody. It just depends. If we can get this done with APIs and we don't have to update them every week or every month or every year for people that don't need to be in the database, we can do this pretty easily and keep the fees the same. But it really depends upon the work that they're asking us to do. We have to be able to justify the expense, and we're going to have to make sure that, and there is a reciprocity licensing fee of $75 currently in the law, which we may have to invoke if they start making it very difficult and tedious for us to do the work it takes to give these compact privileges. So there's a lot of out there, but we're trying to keep it to be the same price at $50 as it is now. Of course, if it goes up, it will be the same for everybody for that particular license. If they want us to do an awful lot of work, we may have to invoke the 75 for everybody. We just haven't seen, the product is not readily available to utilize yet, because that's the problem. And we're going to try and keep it as cost effective for us as we can. And many of the other boards who are computerized like we are saying exactly the same thing. And then we have some small boards that just say, well, we just do it on paper and send you everything. But again, I don't think that they realize that, and this is my concern. I'll give you an example. Let's say that there's a state that sent all that data up once and never wants to doesn't send it again. Well, they may not have done a current criminal background check, and we would be having somebody that is going to be not desirable to be in our community that's going to get a license. And we think that's a problem with old and stale data. And Ms. Wilton brought up a very perfect example of, we may have somebody that we would not give a license to in Louisiana. So they go across to Mississippi, they get a license in Mississippi, and somehow they get that. And then they come back and get a compact license with us because Mississippi didn't do the criminal background check, or they might have used Utah and didn't do a criminal background check. And then we're granting them a license, and they're really somebody that should never have gotten. So there's a lot that how do I want to say, the newness of their approach is not as mature as Ms. Wilton and I, who've been working with these compacts for almost 4 years now, are understanding them. And our concern is we make sure we protect the public, and that's where we're trying to go. And also we want to protect the individual OT's data, because there's no reason on earth why, if one of your OTs does not want to ever get a compact license, or sees no need for it, why they should actually be sending their data to the compact, because that's another source of leak of data that we think is just not proper to expose your data to.
Excuse me. One thing I guess that we have to balance is the, first of all, the best case scenario, Dr. Mann, is that you and others that are thinking like you, like the folks from Maryland, will be able to steer the commission in a different direction as far as the whole just taking in the data of people who want that kind of license. But if it comes down to that the commission insists that that's how it's going to be done, We kind of have to, I feel like we have to balance that with how strong is the desire by occupational therapists in Louisiana to be a part of the compact and to take that risk. So I don't know, Jennifer, what your thoughts are about the strength of the desire of OTs in Louisiana, and if it comes down to that, I guess.
Yeah, I've been reaching out to Chuck with AOTA and kind of getting some more information from him as well. And I do know that, again, they've brought up some good questions that they are looking, because some of the other states did have some of the same concerns. So as he said, they are trying to work through some of those concerns and issues, and they were going to be addressed at their next meeting, which I was trying to look where he sent it in the email when the next one was going to be. But they are going to be reaching out to a lot of the other state associations as well to kind of get the feel of what do practitioners across the states want from like a data share. And then what we'll be able to do, I mean, we had strong support for it when we brought the bill forward in the first place. And so I do think it is something, of course, where it will not affect all practitioners, but there are a lot of practitioners who were very interested in this. And so I am not opposed to getting some information together, though. That way we can share it with practitioners that we have access to let them know where everything is with the process and kind of what's going on, and just kind of start getting some feedback too from practitioners. So.
Miss Jennifer, it would be very helpful if you could sort of poll your body, your members, to see if they want to send data, if they have no intention of getting a compact permission in another state. Do they want their data up in a database that we have no control over? And I think that would be the simplest answer. And if they, I think, and then so procedurally, and Miss Wilton will correct me if I step on parts of my anatomy when I tell you this. Let's say there's a strong feeling that we don't, the body of OT really don't want to share that data, and the commission forces us to. The only way we could avoid it is to basically go back to the legislature and ask them to revoke the law.
Mm-hmm.
But procedurally, otherwise, I don't know that you can get out of it.
Sure. Well, we can definitely put together something to reach out to the people who are, I mean, obviously the contacts that we have are the members, which still is just a portion of practitioners across the state, but I can get that information though.
Now, the other thing is, if you want to work together with us to formulate the similar questionnaire,
Mm-hmm.
got access to every OT and OTA in the state, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll blast them a request for comment and a reply. But again, I think that,
yeah,
I think if you want to do that together and simultaneously, I'm happy to do that with you all. But I think the real key is, again, we can, if they give us the APIs, basically we can have the APIs communicate in the background at night, and they can get their data updated anytime they want to get it updated. It'll be as current as our files are here in the office. That then says we can comply from a cost basis that's reasonable. But again, it's the otherwise principle of your data being outside of our database, where it has another risk of being hacked. I mean, I can tell you that we take great pains. I lose a lot of sleep over always protecting our data, and we're constantly working at it. I mean, if you talk to my IT staff, they'll tell you on a good day we get 7 attacks a second. On a bad day, we could get 300 or 400 a second. So we work very hard to protect it. But as my IT director will always tell you, we have to be perfect every time. The bad guys only have to be perfect once.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it would be good to definitely work on it together, because then we'll get the most information from practitioners. So I think that would be a good option. And then, and I do know, like I said, I know Dr. Van, but they are working with the Department of Defense on the level of security. So it is something that I do think that they are taking seriously from a data security standpoint. But I do think that the practitioners have the right to decide if they want their information to be public, like to be shared or not. So, so I think we should definitely work on that.
Well, let me say this to you. The Department of Defense is funding the development.
Mm-hmm,
They are not operating the computer systems or designing the programs.
mm-hmm,
The Compact Connect is a separate organization. And the Compact Connect will be designing the programs and the security that is, will not be Department of Defense secure. The Department of Defense funds all of these compacts in an effort to make sure that their members and their families, when they get TDY'd, can work in another state and get their ability to practice. And we went ahead several years ago, working with the Air Force, and one of the members of the legislature is ex-Air Force. We now have a preferential treatment and system where we get licenses very quickly for our military and military dependents. This is kind of a nationwide thing that most states did not respond as we did. We were fortunate to have really people who were interested in working with us to get it set up, and we did get it set up in a way that the military likes it. But now that all the states are doing the compact, it's the other side of the coin, because some of these people, we're more worried about you now than we are about the military, because if somebody says that they're military on their application, we move them to the top of the queue, get a few basic things, grant them a license, and come back and clear their data afterwards, because we give them a provisional license, they can go to work, and they can, then we come back, so that if we don't get all the data we need in a timely fashion and they're TDY to the next spot already, we don't have to worry about it. But we want them to get to work, and we're trying to get them to work within, 15 to 20 days of the application for our military. But again, this is now for our OTs that want to practice in Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Utah, whatever, Wyoming, doing telemedicine and things like that. And so we want to make sure that you all know that that side of it puts your data at risk. So we're happy to work with everybody to do our best to, and if we need to go back to the legislature, I think we can make a strong case to the legislature that, it's not going to be profitable or useful, because the community wants to protect its data, and we've addressed a major concern for most compacts, and that is the military. But yeah, again, without them changing the law, we're stuck with doing it. And I'm just gonna, if I have to do it expensively, I have to charge. If I have to do it, with APIs, I'll do it. But it's just, I think it's dangerous, and I'm not happy about it.
Does anybody else have any questions about this? For Dr. Van or Patricia or Jennifer?
I'm good.
Jennifer,
All
what I would ask, if we're gonna do this, why don't you and Miss Ingrid shoot me an email for a couple of days? I'll have Jacinta set us up a Zoom, and we'll decide what we want to ask and how we want to ask it, and we'll get the same questions out. And basically, you can send yours out to your members. Your members will get 2, but everybody will get 1 for sure if they're not a member.
I think that sounds great.
All right, sounds good. Okay. Any public comment?
None at this time.
All right, well, then we are moving on to our next agenda item, which is the fact that we have 3 members who are going to be rolling off of OTAC at the end of 2025. Dr. Van, I'm going to ask for me to be able to share the screen, because
Sure.
I've got a little piece of paper that has, okay, give me a second, y'all. Gotta find the right thing. Here we go. All right. So the folks that are highlighted, Kelly, Kimberly, and myself, we're the 3 that are rolling off. You can see that Kelly's specialty is developmental disabilities, and of course also higher education, and her geographic area is Shreveport. Kimberly's specialty is sensory integration pediatrics, and her geographic area is Lake Charles. And mine is education, and my geographic area is New Orleans. So, it looks like to me, it looks like we need to find somebody with pediatric experience, because nobody else currently on here has anything to do with pediatrics. So I think that would be a priority.
I used to do pediatrics, Ingrid. I used to
Who
do early
graduated?
intervention and outpatient peds.
Oh, good, good, good. That's good. But I still think it would be nice to have somebody who's primary and current in it. Would y'all agree that that would be a priority?
I agree.
Okay. Then I'm in education. We do have Carolyn, she's listed as gerontology, but she's also in higher education. But we would be losing both Kelly and I. And I do feel it's kind of been helpful to have a couple of schools represented. So out of the three, I did think it would be good if another educator joined, unless somebody disagrees with that.
I think that's a good idea.
And then, you know what, I didn't pull up the rules that listed all of the specialty areas we are attempting to cover.
Section 1959, and I can pull it up if you want to share the screen.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, if you'll stop sharing, I'll start sharing.
Okay.
Okay, so advisory committee shall, and this is the section that talks about it, administrative and management, disabilities, developmental disabilities, education, gerontology, mental health, physical disabilities, sensory integration, technology, and work programs.
And just as an FYI, in our revised rules, we changed sensory integration to basic pediatrics. So we do already have folks for mental health, gerontology, administration and management. Do we have anybody? Yeah, Mary, you are, right? That's your specialty, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Technology. Do we have anybody whose specialty is assistive technology? I don't think so. Let me look at my piece of paper again. We don't. We don't have anybody currently whose specialty is assistive technology. And we do have developmental disabilities separate from PEDS. So when we're losing Kelly, who's developmental disabilities. So we have both developmental disabilities and assistive technology that would be. So that
Amy
basically.
Ingrid,
Say-
Amy has her hand raised too. If you,
Oh, I'm so sorry, Amy. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I was planning on stopping. I should have told you earlier at the end of my term, which would be, I'm pretty sure that I was looking the end of this year.
That's right, it is.
So I'm gonna go off too.
Oh, because we have you down for both physical disabilities and a technology. Okay. Amy, doggone it, we're gonna miss you.
I know, I'm sorry.
So, all right, so we do have Glenn, who's adult physical disabilities and mental health. We also have Kathleen, who's adult physical disabilities. So we kind of have that covered. So really, it looks like we have 4 areas that maybe we would want to, I guess, advertise for. And that would be pediatrics, developmental disabilities, assistive technology, and education. Does that sound all right to y'all?
Yes.
Yes.
And then as far as geographic, I mean, we would really hope that folks from North Louisiana, Shreveport, West Louisiana, Lake Charles, and now Amy and I are both from New Orleans, so another New Orleans person. Between those geographic areas and those four specialties.
Is it okay?
Kim
This is
has her hand up.
Yes, hi. Is it okay if I reach out to a couple people in Lake Charles area and see if they're interested and then they would, or is that okay?
I
Yes,
think if they can do that, right, Dr. Van, we can encourage people to apply, can't we?
yeah, matter of fact, what I was gonna tell you is I think we should do both. If you know somebody personally, tell them to do it. But what we can do is we can send out a blast email to all of the members of the OT community, the OTs, the OTAs, and tell them what we need. And ask them if they're interested to supply a CV and send it to us. We can do those sort of things and get it, be preparing to get this done.
Okay.
I had another question about who can apply. As far as it doesn't say anything in our rules, so I'm assuming this is okay. But if somebody who had already completed a full 6 terms on OTAC wanted to reapply, is that allowed or not?
I'd have to ask my legal eagles about that one.
I have to go back and read the rules the general rules on appointments. I think there has to be a cooling off period. I think they have to be off for a period of time and then they can come back, but I will let y'all know as soon as possible. Dr. Van can email y'all to let you know.
Okay. I don't have anybody in mind. Glenn and I had this conversation. I was like, I don't know. Dr. Van, I'm gonna share the screen one more time with another piece of paper. This was the email that went out in December in 2023 that Darby sent to me that I wanted to share and just obviously it needs to be edited, which I'll do in conjunction with Dr. Van. But just take a look at this and tell me, other than the obvious things. For example, in this one, we set up priorities for one of the members to be an OTA. This time we would say, I think a priority is for members to have experience in pediatrics, in either pediatrics, education, higher education, developmental disabilities, or assistive technology.
Yeah, what I'd love you to do is send me this with the edits you want to add. We'll come back and change the edits because Olivia's no longer with us. We have it sent to Jacinta. Do you want anybody who you want this to contact to? Darby's obviously gone. You want us to go to you, or anybody else on the committee? And then we'll get it, once you send us your changes, we'll put in the proper changes for our end. And I can send this to all of the community of OTs and OTAs in the state.
Do y'all think that we should be more specific about the fact that our meetings are at 10 o'clock, usually 10 o'clock to noon on a Friday? Like, should we have that level of detail here so that people can decide before they apply whether they'd be able to participate? That was one thing I was wondering.
I think it would help to know the more information you have, the better. And to say how often they all are, because I don't see that in there. Does it say?
It says the committee determines the frequency and timing of the meetings ranging from quarterly to monthly.
Okay.
I assume. I kind of like that because 4 years ago we were quarterly, last year we were monthly, this year we're every other month. So it does vary, it kind of varies.
Okay.
And then what you can say is that they're all done via Zoom, so you don't have to utilize travel across the state and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I do think I would like to insert the actual time of day though, that we meet. And then my last question for everybody was, it looks like we had a deadline of the last day of August for the applications. And then I guess that gave us, September and October and November to look through the applications and make a decision. Does that still seem like a good time frame for to you, Dr. Van, and also to the members? Does that seem like a good?
Because this is a board appointed committee. It's not governor appointed.
Okay. Does that seem like a good time frame for y'all?
Well, do we have an August meeting? So does it make sense to do it then?
That's a good question.
Will we even address them? Because if we have them in May, is it May the next one? So is the next one July? So should it be July 31st? Or
Yeah, we don't have an August meeting.
Yeah, you're right.
so that doesn't seem to
You're
make
right. That would not make sense. So, unless, it was just to get them in by then so that I can share them with everybody ahead of time though. Cause I think that's what we did last time. I believe Darby sent all the applications out to everybody ahead of a meeting. And then
Yes.
we came to the meeting with like an opinion. So we could still keep it as the August 31st deadline. Then I could send that out to everybody and it would give everybody 2 weeks to review them before our September 12th meeting.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Okay, well, I will edit this and then we'll I'll get with Dr. Van about sending this out on email blast soon so that people can start considering and getting their applications in between now and the end of August. Okay. I am going to, I guess, share it back with this thing here because any public comment?
Hang on and I'll check 1 second, please. I have no public comment at this time.
Okay. Our last item is something that got brought up at our last meeting where we wanted to re-review the language we had created about who can modify a treatment plan. This is in our proposed rules. If we do decide that we may want to change something here, it would be for the future, not necessarily right now. But we wanted to talk about, and we wanted to make sure we had, we were unsure whether we were clear about who has the ability to modify a treatment plan. So I pulled up these are the rules that are with the AG now. These are our proposed rules. So in the intervention section in Peach here, we have that. Oops. What happened? Are y'all seeing the intervention process? Is everybody seeing the rules?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. All right, I tried to make it bigger and then I somehow messed that up. There we go. That an OT has the overall responsibility for the development, the documentation, the implementation, and the modification. So that says that the OT has the overall responsibility to modify. And then in section 2, it kind of repeats that. An OT ensures that the intervention plan and any modifications are documented, within established standards. An OTP collaborates with the client to implement the plan. Then we have letter C here, intervention plan review and modification. An OT reviews and modifies the intervention plan throughout the intervention process, assessing effectiveness and documenting changes in the client's needs and goals. Then in green is where we have anything related to OTP and OTA. When modifying the intervention plan, the OTP selects, implements, and makes modifications to interventions consistent with demonstrated competence levels and client goals. So I think this might be, I don't even really remember who brought this issue up, honestly, but whoever it was, this is probably where
I think it was me. Because I was going through some of the changes and like documenting those and I just saw a contradiction there, or it was confusing to me because one place it says that the OTP,
Right.
when modifying, and the other it just explicitly says OT.
I kind of feel it is a little unclear. When I read C1, I think of an OT assistant who's working with a client um using, let's say, weights. And then the OTA recognizes the need to change it to isometric exercises instead. And because the patient is having some pain that day. And so the OTA, makes the decision to modify the intervention plan that day. And that feels like we should continue to, allow that kind of modification because they have that expertise to be able to do that. But at the same time, the way we currently have it written, it's not necessarily, it does seem to contradict itself. Like C1 contradicts what we said above it.
This might be a silly question, but the intervention plan, I mean, because that seems like just grading the activity. So when we say modify the intervention plan, does that mean changing the goals? I mean, like maybe we need to, not necessarily in the rules, but just discuss clarifying what modifying an intervention plan would look like.
To me, that sounds like modifying the treatment plan, the plan of care, basically. And if you're saying that the patient can't perform the exercises with weights and needs to be modified, isn't that somewhat a change in status?
I mean, I don't
know.
I don't
No, I mean,
know.
well,
I mean, because we grade and we grade up
Right.
and down
True.
constantly. That doesn't seem like a significant change in their cognitive level or their physical level
Okay.
but
but C1 does say that it starts out by talking about when modifying the intervention plan, but then it goes on to say, and makes modifications to interventions. Like that is exactly what we are expecting an OTA to do. We're expecting them to modify the actual intervention if on the spot, if it's not working for the patient right there. Because if otherwise we would just use a tech. That's the difference between an OTA and a tech. An OTA can make those changes to an intervention or a grade up and down. Oh, this is now too easy for the patient. I need to give them more. I need to make it harder. Things like that. But because we combined making modifications to interventions with modifying the intervention plan in the same paragraph, that's where to me it feels confusing. What do you think, Kelly? Is that where it's confusing? You're muted.
sorry. I mean, I'm not in the field right now. So what do these intervention plans look like and how is it being done right now for those of you that are in the clinic or in the hospitals or wherever you are?
Kathleen?
I'm so sorry. Kelly, what did you say?
So, how is it being done now? Like, what does your intervention plan look like, and what would the OT modify? What would the OTA modify? And do you distinguish between an intervention and activity? There's so many synonyms.
They write goals and we just try to meet the goals. Like if they have it, they'll have like a strengthening goal, possibly an ADL goal, because I'm mostly rehab. I don't go down to acute care very often, but once those goals are set, like I kind of judge what the patient's doing before I set up my activity.
So the intervention plan doesn't necessarily include the methods that you use to
Correct.
meet.
It does not include the methods at all. I'm
Yeah.
making them up as go.
So I think that there's a lot of variability in what one considers an intervention plan. Maybe if it was more specific, like modifying goals, it would definitely be something in collaboration with the OT. You wouldn't just change the goal. But I don't know. Intervention plan to me is just very vague, which we need it to be vague. I get that because people do it different, but I don't know anybody else. Again, I'm not in the practice right now. I'm just trying to figure out how to teach it.
And well, what we want is when OTs and OTAs read this, that they understand what their roles are. We don't, we don't want there to be confusion when people read this. And
Who else is working right now?
anybody else working with OT assistants? Unfortunately,
I'm
we
not
don't.
working with an assistant.
Okay.
So Amy, when you write a plan, what does that look like? Is it just their evaluation results and then their goals, or do you also add specific types of interventions?
I am
I guess
not even currently doing these goals because I'm in the different program and doing caregiver support program at the moment. So I don't necessarily write goals. So
Okay.
I'm not the best to answer.
I mean, when I read it, I mean, as Dakota, when I'm reading this, I just see that it says basically like the goals are written and you're modifying the intervention plan like throughout you implementing therapy for the duration of the patient needing therapy. And I would assume, as I'm reading this, that, as they get better or, because for instance, if they start out dependent and their goal is to be modified independent because that was their baseline previous to the fall, the hip, or, the stroke, whatever, then obviously I'm going to be working towards getting modified independent. And then if we become, let's say we start out dependent and we do a bath and rehab and they're max assist, and then the next time they're a min assist. So I release them into the skilled nursing facility as minimal assistance needed to perform a shower. Then I'm assuming that once again they're going to read that and they're going to say, start us out here at min assist and then work our way to independent. I mean, when I'm reading this, that's what that says to me. Does
So
that make sense?
Kathleen, when you
So
read one, you understand that it means that you as an OT assistant are able to modify the actual interventions that you're providing in order to meet the goals that were established by the OT. That's how it reads to you?
that's how it reads to me.
Okay.
So
I
with
will-
the first part of C, would that be contradictory to you at all? Where it just says an OT reviews and modifies the plan?
Service reviews and modifies intervention plan through the, so that does, I mean, that part does say to me that just the OT is going to review and modify. So I guess is your question that you need to put an occupational therapist,
We just want to
an
be consistent, but also be
an
consistent.
occupational therapist reviews. Could you put, can it be vague enough to say when treatment plans are implemented, then this would be the process and then be 1 and 2? Could it say that?
Seems like it's got to say that occupational therapy practitioner modifies it because I think it's appropriate for them to modify it.
Yeah, can it say the practitioner because I guess my question is, because Kelly was saying like it's contradicting, like, because it says the OTP selects implements on number 1. So are you saying that it's saying something different because it just says the occupational therapist? I mean, because when I
Yes, that's
read 1 and
100%.
2 together, okay, so could it just say the practitioner, the therapist practitioner reviews and modifies the intervention? Because 1 and 2 are basically saying that we're working together. I mean, because it's really like realistically, if you're in home health, the occupational therapist is doing the eval, and the therapist, the CODA is doing all the treatment. I mean, generally speaking, more so than none, and that's what happens. And so
Yeah.
they're only coming in on the reassessment date. So they're relying on the CODA to change things as we progress to get closer to meeting our goals.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it almost comes back down to what Kelly said is, what is the definition of intervention plan? You know, we've established that it's the OT who sets the goals in conjunction with the client. So, so the OT is the one who's supposed to be keeping track of whether that needs to be updated. But the OTA has the flexibility to figure out the actual interventions to meet those goals within their own competency level. And I can tell you that from in acute care, and I mean, and Kathleen can contradict me if I'm wrong, but the intervention plan usually consists of the terms that you use, the CPT code terms, that the intervention plan is going to consist of therapeutic activity, self-care training, and therapeutic exercise, as an example, functional mobility training. So they generally the intervention plan, that the OT does have to list what's the interventions that are going to be used, but they usually are whatever is the CPT code description. So so they're very broad. In other words, the word therapeutic exercise is extremely broad, and it will allow the OT assistant to say, well, we're going to use weights this day. Oh, this day I think we're going to use isometric exercise or whatever. So I guess it does kind of come down to what do we mean by intervention plan, and which parts, you know, which parts of it are the sole discretion of the OT to move the goals forward, but that the OTA can modify the actual interventions themselves to meet those goals. Would that be about right?
I agree with that.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'm going to go back and see if we defined intervention plan earlier. No. Maybe that's what we eventually do the next time we modify this thing. Is define what we mean by intervention plan. What we mean by that would be frequency, duration, session length, goals, short, long term. Those are the things that only the OT can change.
That sounds like a good idea.
Mhm. So is this part that you have highlighted here, is it possible to change this right now, or are we just
It would slow us
down?
again. And I personally, I don't feel like it's anything that would be
I
to
I
the
don't want
point
to
where
slow it
it would, like,
down.
be a public hazard.
Yeah,
That's language that would rise to the level of like potentially causing harm.
right. Yeah, I don't want to slow anything down.
But we put in the rules that we were going to modify the rules every 3 years. So that we were going to review them every 3 years. So I'm going to include that for our next go round, that we
Yeah,
define intervention plan in all the definitions.
sounds good.
Do we have any public comments?
No, ma'am, you have no public comments at this time.
Public comments. Okay. Well, that I believe was the end of our agenda. Yes, we don't have anything else. Our next meeting is, and write it down, so I'm looking it up, sorry. May 9th, 2025 at 10 o'clock a.m. And if nobody has anything else and there's no public comments, then this meeting is adjourned at 11:03 a.m.
Thank you all for your time, and Miss Ingrid will be getting together with you and when you want to meet together to talk about what that letter should look like.
Yes, I will.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks to all of you all for your input.